There you go.
See. Brian, can you hear me?
Thumbs up. All right, are you ready, Sammy? Are you ready? I will now call the May 31st, 2023 Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee meeting to order at 6 o'clock. First thing is roll call.
And this roll call is going to go for both this meeting and our city meeting, the URA. So we have Mayor Bell, director at the URA meeting. Alan Wells is here. Kathy Engelbretson, present. John Lyman, Claire Smith, Kyle Blaine is absent. John Fox, Linda Krager, Elise Laundrie, Laura Tryon, Todd Waters, Terry Dawson is absent, and Jeff Malone. We do have a quorum for both meetings.
Thank you, Sammy. First order on our agenda is the minutes from last year, which are in the packet. And you had a chance to look at that. What is it? Right after the agenda for the URA. So does anyone have any corrections or anything they noticed from the minutes? That right from a year ago. Hopefully you have a better memory than I do. Especially John. You have to have the best memory on this one. If there's not anything noted, I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes May 31st, 2022 as presented. There's a second. Any discussion before voting? Favor aye. Aye. Opposed nay. Abstaining. Okay, you're approved. Right. Next for the URA meeting is public comment. Sammy, do we have anyone to give public comment?
We have no public comment tonight.
And I saw you, but and we'll present the 23-24 URA budget meeting message.
Is a component of the city. Actually, our financial statements, the URA is actually in the city financial statements, so it's very intertwined with the city. The purpose of the URA is to contribute, the main purpose to the sewer fund for debt. And that has a limitation of about $9 million. Given the current transfers, assume that that will be reached around 2032. The budget is a pretty simple budget. The only revenues that really come in for the urban renewal is tax receipts and some interest income. And the only expenses of the urban renewal are just some administrative costs, audit costs, and then the transfer out to the wastewater debt. So $375,000 transfer out And I've kind of kept that at 375 because last year we had some little property tax decrease. There was a couple of properties reassessed in the industrial area, and we actually had a little bit of a lower than anticipated property tax. This year it has come back up. If you look at the third page, that the tax receipts history, it actually has come back up substantially. So if we never know what's going on out there unless somebody tells us, and so if somebody sells their property and there's a bunch of work being done or whatever, and the county comes in and reassesses, unless we ask for information, we don't get it. So, so we try to watch it pretty closely. But there has been kind of a recovery in the last years. You can see 22, 23. We received $425,000, 689, which was a good recovery from the year before. It could be that there were some delinquents too that paid up. So, so anyway, the tax dollars are coming in and now pretty consistent with expected, but I still haven't increased the transfer over just to make sure. It will leave an unending balance of 108,575 by paying 375 to the wastewater debt. And then there is about $10,000, a little over $10,000 in administrative costs. And that is predicting $417,000 in property taxes. So pretty simple budget. There's not much to it. And I can answer any questions you might have regarding it.
And the special payment is for to pay the debt.
It's wastewater debt, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I just needed to fix that.
We have any other questions? For Ann? No, okay. If not, I will entertain a motion. And again, we make a motion to recommend budgets to the city council. They're making a recommendation, basically, just to clarify that. So I will entertain a motion on the URA budget.
We accept the URA budget as shown.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstaining. That does finish the URA work. So 9 p.m. I will adjourn that part. Then next up will be our second meeting of the Coburg Budget Committee. Papers. So I will call, wait till 6:10. 6:09 now. All right, I will call that to order at 6:09 also. Oh, it's just now 6:10. Let's make it 6:10. And we have had roll call, so we know that we have a quorum. So we do not need to do that part. next up for the budget would be public comment. And do we have anybody here for public comments?
We do not have anybody signed up for public hearing tonight, just to speak to the public hearing tonight. If they show up in the next 15 minutes, though, because of the way it was noticed, we will need to let them
Okay.
address the committee.
And nothing in writing for us.
Correct.
All right. So next up would be the public hearing. And so it's an ORS requirement that we hold a public hearing, giving citizens the opportunity to discuss possible use of funds. I will open the public hearing for resolution 2023-08A, declaring the city's election to receive state revenues at 6:11 p.m. And first up is a staff report by Ann.
This is an annual, before the budget committee, to talk about the state shared revenues that we receive from the state. We receive 4 streams, which is cigarette sales, liquor sales, highway trust fund revenues, and state shared revenue. So the highway trust fund revenues of about $105,000 go directly to the street fund for operations, repairs, reconstruction, preservation, maintenance. So those are budgeted to be received there. The other revenue streams, which equal about 51,125, go into the general fund, and it's not very much money per se. And it supports the administration of the general fund. And so that's how they are spent. And these are per capita. So it just depends on what our population is according to Portland State University. So we don't get to tell them what our population is. They figure it out. They tell us what our population is. And then we're paid by the head, basically, for the state shared revenues. I can answer any questions you might have.
How much is it per capita?
It's different. Every one of them's a little bit different per capita. I can send that out to you because it's 4 different graphs.
I don't need that. I was curious.
Yeah, every one of them is a little bit different per capita. Yep.
I'm trying to reconcile this with this budget that we're going to talk about in a few minutes.
It's not, no,
It's
don't
not-
try to reconcile it. That's gonna make your head spin.
We don't have to read the resolution, do we, or do we? Okay. But you do have the resolution in your packet.
So this resolution will go to the city council for adoption.
That they can't hear anybody except for Ann and myself. So let's make sure we speak into the mic.
Well,
Can you hear me?
I will send out a little graph telling you per capita how much each one of these paid. Might be interesting. It's just all over the board how they figure it out. Yeah.
Do you know how often they assess the population? Is it an annual thing?
No,
I think so.
it's, so it used to be every 4 years, and then they did some changing in territories in Oregon. And Coburg ended up in one of the changed territories, so we were assessed 2 years apart. So
It's every
so
2 years or they
it was
changed it?
every 2 years. Now it probably is gonna go back to 4. So yeah.
it's kind of a long gap.
It is a long gap. So, and that might change, it just depends on, they did change it up a little bit 2 years ago and it was actually good for us. So The other part is, when we're doing people say it doesn't matter. It does matter. So if you have a chance to talk to your neighbors, make sure that they are filling out their census, because that makes a huge difference. And the last census, we did have an issue with all of they were marked Eugene, the mailing was marked Eugene, Oregon, so they were all returned. It didn't say Coburg, Oregon, so there was a big mess up and people didn't receive them. So we did do quite a bit of work telling people to go online and do it. But it's just important for as many people as possible to get that word out because it's important to Coburg.
Well, and it also, one of the issues on the last census was not just the difference in the cities, but they won't deliver. For those of us who only have a PO box for mail delivery, they only will put the physical address on it, so it does not go to the PO box.
Yeah.
We're on that myself.
Is there any way to do I know they used to do before technology, census takers. Is there any way to have a team of volunteers or people
Yeah,
that could
there
canvass
absolutely
to
is.
make
They
sure
asked
that we get
for 'em,
people?
and we did advertise for them. I don't know, they hire people. And I'm not sure who worked in Coburg because they don't share that with us, but yes,
But it
absolutely.
has to go through them and you have to be hired. It wouldn't just be a group of volunteers. that
Yeah,
could
you
do
have
it?
to go through them, but yeah, I'm sure they would love volunteers. So,
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Good answer.
And if we could get those PO box people so that we know that we're not leaving them out.
Any other questions or input? If not, am I able, Sammy, to close the meeting? The hearing. I'm closing the hearing at 6:17. And there is a second public hearing scheduled for June 13th. So there is another opportunity. Next up is follow-up questions and requested information from our last budget meeting. From Ann.
I didn't get any questions from the last
Oh, okay.
budget meeting at all, so I have no follow-up information to give you. So this sheet right here that you were looking at represents the budget as presented, which is 17,969,888. Because I didn't have any questions, I didn't have any other handouts other than I reprinted this so that you would be clear what the budget is. Do I have any questions that maybe somebody didn't send along that they wanted to ask regarding the budget? We did such a great job of presentation. There's no
Pretty
questions.
It was pretty clear.
I did have one thought on just the presentation of it.
Okay,
I thought it might be helpful. You could just, think about it and either take the advice or not, but where we have our beginning balance, our revenues and our expenses, those are 3 columns that are on the current report. For me, I would love to see a subtotal behind that
Okay.
tells me beginning balance plus revenues minus expenses equals what? What is the difference?
Okay.
I realize that we can all use our calculators and add that up, but I think it's helpful for people to actually see that.
okay.
It's my 2
Okay.
cents. If you have room.
Well,
to put it
that
on the
usually
page.
is the ending fund balance. It's over here at the end. So you're taking your revenues less your expenses and transfers in and contingency and then the ending fund balances.
Yeah, so that's the total, but I like that. For me, I want to know what is the difference between my beginning balance revenues and my expenses
Okay,
before we start allocating stuff to make up for the fact that we don't have enough, that our expenses are higher than our revenues.
So Kathy, are you saying before the allocated transfer in column?
Yes.
Okay,
Because that tells us how we're doing,
I
how
see.
are we doing with our
Yeah.
budgeting? Are
Yeah,
we,
I
are we
can see that.
budgeting to spend more than we're taking in? It'll show you that, and it would show us that very
Okay.
easily in that one column if we were to
Okay,
add that.
okay.
Did you add contingencies into that for that too? That is a,
If it were me, I'd like to just see it
for the contingency.
before that, because that tells me right away, immediately, do I have a problem or not? You know, just at a very high level, at a 30,000 foot level, is this, are we spending more than we're bringing in or not? And that column there would tell me that immediately at a glance.
And then sometimes that does happen because the city's been saving money and then we have a big capital project that we're suddenly gonna put money towards. But it's a good way to raise a question of why are we spending more than we're taking in? So,
Yeah, it just makes it more obvious so that it's not, it, you know, Anne's been really great about pointing out to us, but if we didn't have somebody standing there pointing it out, would you notice that without, you know, maybe?
I think that's great.
I will leave that in the message or in the notes for next year to change that up. Anything else?
I wanted, and I think Todd, I think it was you that asked last meeting, was there any way, as we look, several years down the road and we saw our revenues, our ending fund balance declining, and you, I believe it was you that asked, what could we do to increase revenues? And I've thought about that. And we've talked about, maybe it would be an increase in fees. One of the things, and this may not be popular, but I'm going to say it anyway, is several years ago, City of Eugene did a payroll tax that went specifically towards public safety. And that passed because people recognized that to do public safety, to fund public safety projects, there needed to be more revenue. So I just want to throw that out there to this group. I'm not suggesting it. I just think that it is something that we need to think about, because I think your question about, well, how do we get more revenue is a very valid one.
Since the payroll tax only applied to if you're the company you work for actually is in Coburg, right?
Yes, because particularly if you look at the industrial area, most of those workers do not live in Coburg. And so as I was thinking about it, I thought, well, it's a little bit like the gas tax that we passed. It passed because most people that reside in Coburg don't necessarily buy gas in Coburg. I mean, I do sometimes, it just depends. But to routinely buy gas, I don't routinely buy it in Coburg because I'm not usually headed that way towards the freeway. But I think it would take work on our part to frame the message correctly. But it's just something to think about.
That was kind of one of my questions since we talked about that, because the council would need to explore that. Correct?
Absolutely.
So is there a recommendation needed from this committee, or just having heard that we should, is that something you can take forward without a formal recommendation?
The committee can make a recommendation that the council explore general fund revenue options.
Alternates, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
mechanisms to increase revenue.
Okay.
And then the council receives that, they can actually vote to add it to the work plan. So that's something that can
Okay.
happen, or they can discuss it at their next retreat. So it gets put on to a list of discussionary items for the council.
Is anybody interested in making that recommendation besides me? Can I make a recommendation?
So, yeah.
I can. Okay, well, I would recommend that we, however you said that, look at alternatives to the general fund, explore revenue options, however. is the
Explore
best
revenue
way to-
options for the general.
Any seconds?
A
Second.
second. We have 2 seconds.
All right, any discussion on that? I sort of jumped that one in.
No, I think that that's wise, Linda, given what Ann presented at the last budget meeting and looking out into future years.
We should ask what the projected budget for 2024, 25, next
Okay.
out 3 years or so.
For that discussion, you mean, for when that comes to council?
Just to know what the dollar amount of revenue.
Yes, that would help. Any other discussion? Ready to vote?
So clarification before you vote, we have a motion by Linda Krager, second by John Lehman to look at the revenue for the city. Is that what the specific look, or is it to look at a specific revenue?
Revenue options.
Revenue options. Okay,
Well, yeah, we aren't gonna specify because we don't know what would be best.
perfect. Revenue options. Thank you.
All ready to vote? All those in favor, aye?
wait,
Okay, go ahead.
Want to specify I think there were 3 different areas that we talked about, or is it just explore options and then whoever is doing that?
My
research?
recommendation was general explore options, but we can entertain specifics.
Unlimited to the three and
Yeah.
any other options.
If you want to add anything or you want to keep it general, okay? Thanks. Ready now? Okay, all those in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. Abstaining. Great. I gotta find my spot. Okay, so that brings us back specifically to the budget, which actually was where we were at. Sorry. And no, that was good because I had that on my notes to bring up somewhere. So, we didn't have any requests for information outside of here. We have an opportunity now if something has come to mind, if there's an area you're not clear about or want more information on. So this would be the time to ask that of Ann, and we have Brian and I think Larry was back there, so, and Sammy. Otherwise, we would be then to the point to look at whether we're ready to approve and recommend the budget. So questions, information needed. And well, then I will entertain a motion to approve the budget.
To approve the proposed budget fiscal year 2023-24.
All right. There's a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Okay, so any discussion before we vote? Quiet tonight. All right, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstaining. Okay, the budget is approved to council. So next up, so our business is not finished quite. We last time started a discussion about combining the finance audit committee and the budget committee and did not have the information that we needed. And so we do have that in our packet. Now I got mine, but I think, Ann, were you going to discuss this further?
Yeah, so did send out the bylaws, so of those of you that
Yes.
didn't get to read them. You asked for a little bit more information. What does the Finance and Audit Committee do? So they promote the fiscal accountability of the city. They act as an advisory board body to the city council and the finance manager on matters pertaining to oversight and responsibilities. They review internal controls. They're acceptable and they are good practices, accepted practices, nationally accepted practices. They do review accounting reports that are given to the city council on a quarterly basis and discuss them, raise any questions they have. Are involved with choosing an auditor, so they are involved with an RFP. If we put one out for auditor, they may be involved in the interview process of the new auditor. And they would also be in the process, in the position to make a recommendation to terminate an auditor if they did not feel that the auditor was doing a good job. We do review the audit, and this year the Finance and Audit Committee actually received a presentation from the auditor. He made the recommendation to the council to adopt the audit. And then they monitor any kind of, if there were deficiencies listed in our audit report, then the Finance and Audit Committee would be the committee that would monitor, what are the deficiencies? How can we improve our practices to make sure that they don't happen again? They do give a report to the council quarterly, written or verbal. To do with finance, budget, fiscal policies. They have been reviewing the financial policy manual. So that's their main responsibilities. They meet on the quarter, and generally it's maybe an hour and a half meeting. So I think that the question on the table was whether or not it seemed prudent to think about blending these two committees, or having a subcommittee of the budget committee serve as a finance and audit committee. Part of that was it's a very small committee, and the people that are on it have been on it a very long time. And the second part was just this cohesiveness of information regarding audit, and then follow up throughout the year on budget to actual, and then the audit reporting. So the question, and this came from the committee, this wasn't my idea. It was, would you go ask the budget committee if they thought it was a good idea? You can say, we don't want to make that decision and we're going to push that to the city council, or you can give your input. It's up to this body what you want to do with that. I think the biggest question is there people that are on the budget committee outside of council members who would have an interest in attending a quarterly meeting to get more information on the finances of the city and follow up to the budget that you adopted? So I guess that's the biggest question, because if the majority of the people on the budget committee don't really have an interest in being more involved in the quarterly part of it, then I think we're kind of dead in the water there. So that was the question on the table. How it would work, it would be people that are the citizen members of the budget committee, not city council, would be some form of a committee under the budget committee. That would be the finance review committee or finance audit committee. So I think it's for you to discuss. I know you had some discussion last week on it, but that was the question at hand.
How many citizens are on it currently?
4. Yeah.
And most of those people have been on it for quite some time.
There's actually only 3 at this time and a council liaison. So
With the
Yeah.
exception of me, Nancy, I've only been on the committee for a year.
Yeah.
So, but,
Yeah.
yeah, Colleen and,
Terry.
Terry served on.
And I think it's a great committee. I mean, it was formed if I look backwards, it was formed at a time when this city was having a lot of financial distress. So there was a reason that we needed that extra layer of oversight. I personally like the idea of members from the budget committee serving on that committee, because I think that would give a cohesiveness and a clarity of information that is passed. You're right, we do have one council member. In fact, it's Councilor Wells is on the audit committee, budget and audit, finance and audit committee this time, but just as a liaison, that's our role
Right,
as
right.
council.
What numbers would we look at? We would. The members of the budget committee here and for potential, are we looking at a 9-member committee or are we looking at just some of the members?
Well, Terry is on the budget committee and so is Elise. So that would leave only Colleen Marshall, that is not on the budget committee.
Sammy.
But to that,
Yeah.
so the budget committee right now, so if you guys remember, right, 2 years ago, we went from being a budget committee and working under bylaws of the city to a budget committee working under the ORS. The ORS very clearly states that counselors and citizens are equal at the budget committee level. There's not one that's higher than the other, and that the body is one body. So we can't separate counselors from citizens or electors in that. The other thing is we can do it by going back to it bylaws and having our own budget committee / finance, and setting up our own laws and going away from the ORS, which is some people do that. It will also have to be still a separate committee to be able to. You have to, in order for a committee to meet, you have to have a quorum. Without leaving under the ORS. Do that with our bylaw. Cannot do that with it. Does that make sense?
John.
Does the RS state how many people need to be on said committees?
Yes, it is. For ours, it's based off the elected seats full. So it's 6 and 6. Our mayor is not a voting member on our budget committee. She's not part of our city council because of the way our charter is set up. So it's 12. So if there's a vacancy on our city council, if we only have 5 counselors, that changes a little bit, but 12 is what we have.
So having worked through that with coming into compliance with the ORS not that long ago, I'm a little anxious about changing that to a bylaw situation myself. So I will just express that opinion. Other input, yes.
Yeah, I think for me, some of you might know I chaired the finance committee finance audit committee for about 5 years. It's neither here nor there, but just so in case you're wondering. I think the thing for me, the reason I would hear what you're saying about the ORS, I'll come back to that. I think the main reason would simply be that we're a small town and we're trying to minimize how many volunteers we need to have. And so I think to me, that's a argument in favor of trying to utilize the same people on both committees, on both the budget committee and the finance audit committee. The other secondary favorable thing about combining them is just that knowledge, that additional knowledge that everybody on that committee would have, then not just sitting and looking at the budget, but also reviewing the financial, results each quarter. And that might be nice for people. But the drawbacks are how would we make it work and potentially still use the ORS as our budget committee guidance instead of bylaws. And second of all, the other concern is these are very, very different committees with totally different purposes, and they absolutely would have to
we have to be very clear that they wear completely different hats on the two different committees. If we were to have the same citizens on both committees. Because one of them is oversight and the other one is budget, and those, from my professional finance background, those are two very, very different things. And they have to be kept separate. The whole point of having oversight is that you're not going to be tempted to say, oh, here was my budget. Well, I wish our actuals were closer to our budget. And then you start going, you start bending rules and stuff to try to get your actuals closer to that budget. That's where people get into trouble. So
Another thought I had was that not everyone wants a year-round commitment on committees. And the budget committee has offered an opportunity, to only serve for part of the year. That being said, I have felt what's maybe missing is something midway where we could see how what we budgeted is working, because when you come back the next year and something's completely changed, you missed out on this came up and we had to make a switch to here. So I have felt the need for a winter or a 6-month later meeting of some sort, whether that could be going to the audit finance committee as a joint thing, at 6 months. I don't know, but I would put out there that not everybody on the budget committee is looking to go to quarterly and or possibly more often meetings throughout the year. So how about other folks?
When I applied to be on the, I signed up for either the finance and audit or budget. I'd be
So
okay.
you'd be good.
I guess that was my question is to the budget committee. Is there an interest in a quarterly meeting? Or even, as she said, a halfway through the year meeting, because if there's not, then, but if there are folks here that would be interested, either and be offered an invitation to the
Right.
budget, the finance and audit committee, but they can't vote or anything, but they could participate, I'm assuming, in the meeting. So.
Who else? Yes.
I just have a question, Anne. Can you remind me if the same quarterly expense information that we receive at the finance audit committee meetings is then presented to the city council?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So, yeah, your point. And I mean, hopefully, you guys feel like you're getting the same information that we are on finance audit committee and a chance to review that. But,
Well, city council would, I wouldn't be part of that, but
Jason, you were a counselor. Okay, yeah.
no,
we can
don't
share.
put that out there. Yeah.
That's clear.
I just have a question and don't fully understand what each group has the power to do, but it sounds like the budget committee has voting power. But the finance audit committee is just oversight that gives the budget committee input. Is that correct? How hard would it be for a budget committee member to completely take off that budget committee hat as a member of that committee? And I guess, would the members of the committee feel that they had to defer to someone on the budget committee that they maybe felt was more knowledgeable and might not be willing to bring things up that they were troubled about? 'Cause it seemed like at first it was to help with clarity and restore public trust in process. So whether there's more people that would be interested if they even know it exists that might hop on. Just questions because I don't have knowledge.
Well,
to want
that's-
to make a decision on
that's where we are right now. Todd, I'm gonna ask you, what's your thought?
Well, I don't feel like I have a strong opinion one way or another. Not opposed to the idea simply because I think knowledge share is a good thing, and the more citizen involvement that exists, I think the better, especially when it comes to if it is worth pursuing, given Sammy's message about us needing to move away from, go back to by law. Although how difficult that process is, or what's required, or pros and cons of each. I mean, and why did we go to ORS in the first place? Going back to bylaws, are we going
That was my
in a
question.
direction that we should be for something like
Well,
this?
I could try to answer that, but I'm gonna let Sammy answer that.
It got very redundant trying to have our bylaws because being a home rule city, things overlap. And some things that the ORS is required, but we had in our bylaws, we had to file or follow. But other things we didn't. So it was kind of just pinging back and forth on which way to go. I think when we looked into it, Anne, wasn't it like 8% of other cities did follow the ORS for the budget committee, and it just made things clear. And it's not necessarily
It was a
right
lot
or
less
wrong, but incorrect. Anybody on the budget committee, other than a city councilor, can sit as a financial oversight committee member. The conflict is with our city councilors.
That's kind of why I said, not the city
I know.
councilors,
Yeah.
the citizen members of the budget committee. And it's saying, would you like to be invited to the meeting? And you'll get the same information and you're welcome to come. My fear is that this little committee is gonna run out of steam and they're feeling like they are kind of, Kathy was the chair for many years and she has a lot of experience to bring to the table. And they're feeling a little bit of a loss there. I think that perhaps one or two might feel like they would love to see some fresh people step up.
Did you have something else? Shane?
Yeah, I had two questions. The first one, the ORS and bylaw situation. Proposal off the table, would we switch to, we have any reason to switch back to bylaw? As opposed to law? Would we want to?
Not that I've heard from committee members.
So just asking that in general, like. Okay, correctly. And then the second piece in terms of budget committee members, would this be a requirement? Or is it an option to also serve? Finance and audit.
It would be an option to
Would be
also.
an option.
When
Well,
recruitment is
yeah.
open, right?
So, yeah, so like for existing members of the budget committee, did this pass next quarter, are we required to attend as finance? Or are we optional?
Whether you had an interest in participating, nobody's going to be forced to participate. It was just that could we put the invitation out there for the budget committee to participate and perhaps have a few more people at the table.
And Jeff, I'd like to ask your input as well.
Once a year coming in, getting blindsided by everything that happened. Point. Or
Yes, John.
Start there. So it wouldn't be a combined budget finance audit committee. It's all of a sudden I'm feeling like I'm at more meetings. And it would be the budget committee that would choose to be part of the finance committee. Correct? That's the way we're headed?
For some of the budget committee members, perhaps.
Yeah, we could, at large. But we,
but not city councilors.
fine.
Yeah.
So we're,
The citizen member.
yeah, but, preserving some of, what's being said about, how often you're committing yourself to. So would we, Sammy, you're looking to change I don't know if they have bylaws or whatever describes the finance audit committee. Would we increase the membership and or say 2 at large or whatever number we come up with, budget committee members? Or is it just invitation and sometimes these people, no one shows up and the 3 remaining people become more and more alienated, which you don't want. So,
Well,
want
I
to add
think,
a little juice to this
I
thing.
think that's what we're trying to figure out is it an optional thing or are we trying to look at combining or you had something you wanted to say, John?
So it's under Article 4 of meetings, it implies that if you're a member of this committee, this is expected. Otherwise, you have to ask for permission to not attend. Section.
Right, but being a
3,
member is optional.
being a member, but
Yeah.
if you're going to approve this,
Right.
and then you accept it, then you're expected to attend.
So I think that's where I'm not clear, because what I just heard from Sammy was that if a member of the budget committee currently to be a member of the finance and audit committee, that was a choice that they can make. It's an
Right,
optional.
I'm just saying, if you are going to be a member of this, then under section 2 and 3, you're expected to attend.
So Sammy, we have a little confusion around optional attendance versus if they are somehow, I'm going to use the word combined, maybe that's not the right thing, that then there's an expectation as a member to attend those meetings. And again, so the budget committee commitment, finance audit committee commitment are different.
There
This
would be an
point.
application process and an appointment and a responsibility and to attend. So if they decided as a budget committee member that decided to join the finance audit committee, you would be on 2 committees with 2 different set of tasks.
Currently.
How is that different? Yeah, I've been kind of trying to figure out what's the difference with how we're doing it now.
So Kathy actually explained it very well, where if with the budget committee, you are out by ORSs on what you're doing, you're approving the budget. Financial oversight committee oversight down in, working with the auditor, flags, throwing them out to council, helping with policy.
But how would that change if we,
Your
adopted
question
this
is
change.
structure related, not
Yeah.
role. All differences, I think, are there, but just the structure difference.
Right,
It
we're
sounds
looking
like
at
it's-
membership, there's 4, I'm sorry.
Right, no.
There's, right now it says 4 members, we have 3, but we know we're reaching out, hoping somebody apply. Now we're talking about this concept of budget members. Not necessarily, combining the 2, but there would be some sort of at-large positions or something like that. There would be, 2 members of the budget committee, or at least that's the way I'm going, without having all 5 members being required to show up quarterly. Trying to recognize.
It's
And
getting
that's,
very
well,
confusing.
Yeah, so the original question was, so let's go back to the original
right.
question was there any way that the finance and audit committee could be blended in some way with the budget committee? And so eliminate the finance and audit committee possibly and make it a subcommittee of the budget committee. That was the question.
It was just the opposite. I thought it was the budget committee members would blend in with the.
No, the original question was not that. It was what I just said. That was the original. And then it kind of got convoluted in conversation. So, I mean, the whole hope was that there was a value in the committee, the budget committee having more participation and receiving more information throughout the year regarding finances. So perhaps there's a different way of doing that. Maybe we have as Linda said, a January meeting where the budget committee is invited back and the finance and audit committee are there and we do a 6-month check-in. And that serves as one of the meetings of the finance and audit committee. That might work. But the original thought was, did we really need 2 committees? That was the whole point.
Well, if we're asking that question, I'm wondering if we're the right group to make that decision. So my opinion, that seems like a city council decision because you're taking an oversight committee that's holding some accountability there out of the picture unless it's blended in another way. I don't know if we're the right group for that decision, but who else has input on that?
I think we would be in the position of making a recommendation to
In the
council.
council,
for-
okay. Okay. Well, is anybody ready to make a recommendation?
We go back and restate what Ann just said. That the initial question was, could the Finance and Audit Committee become a subcommittee of the Budget Committee? Not a standalone committee, which is what it is right now, I believe.
Right.
Right? And then, so I think that's question 1. Question 2, if I understand correctly, would some members that are currently on the Budget Committee, only the citizen members on the Budget Committee, are there 1 or 2 of those people, of you people, I should say, that would be interested in serving on that subcommittee? So that's that question. And then the third piece, if I've got this right, would be, would the entire Budget Committee, including council members, like to come back and do a 6-month check-in with the Audit and Finance Committee? Did I get it all? A work session, yes.
Did you say the second part again?
Lord. So let's see, what was the second part? The 2 or an unnamed number of current citizen members of the Budget Committee would apply and be appointed to the subcommittee of the Finance and Audit.
Appointed or apply for?
I was going with you in the beginning where you were saying the Finance and Audit Committee becomes a subcommittee
Of the
Committee.
Budget Committee. Yes, rather than a standalone committee, which is what it is right now. And then if some current citizen members on the Budget Committee would like to serve on the Finance and Audit Subcommittee, then they could apply and be appointed. Did I get that right? Okay.
Yeah, I just think it gets,
Anymore, but I was just bylaw, current bylaw. Change,
Right.
to change the recruitment to only be budget committee members. People again throw us right back to the ORS.
Yeah. And
Well,
we'll worry
yeah,
about that.
Okay. So could we look at the citizen members of the Budget Committee, not as, and how would we address that? So if I say, well, they're not really, no, that doesn't work. I can't do it.
Okay,
Somebody
maybe
else has to
just let somebody else talk. All right, Claire.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking through this. So I think, again, back to sort of the reasons why we would want to do this. The first reason being, if we have 5 citizens that are willing to serve on the budget committee are those same 5, or I don't know if it's 5 or 6 people willing to also be our finance audit committee. And then we only have to recruit 5 or 6 volunteers instead of 10. Because we have 5 or 6, I'm not clear if it's 5 or 6 citizen members on this committee. That's why I keep saying 5 or 6. Which one is it? Is it 6? So, okay, 6 on this, 4 on the other, that's 10 volunteers. If we were to reduce that down to 6, that would be kind of nice for a city this size, but that would also mean that we would be asking the volunteers, the citizen members of this committee to also volunteer for the other committee. How we would organize that so it doesn't mess around with the ORS, I think we could probably figure something out, but that's one. If the main purpose, though, is really just that citizen members of the budget committee would like to have a little more information during the year and not just come once, as you say, and get everything thrown at you and you don't, yeah, okay. I think we could accomplish that by simply inviting, the budget committee members to one of the finance audit committee meetings every year, because they're getting the same information. The finance audit committee gets the same financial packet that the city council gets. So we could either invite the citizen budget committees, formally invite them to either a finance audit committee meeting and or to a city council meeting mid-year to make sure that you all were feeling like you had at least a little more information, during the year. So to me, it seems like, which problem are we trying to solve? And then you kind of know.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
I think that if they are going to combine, it can't be a if you would like to. I kind of feel like if they're going to combine, we need some citizen budget committee members to say, we will have X number of members that we will appoint that will take on responsibility, because you can't combine them and have it be nobody shows up, because then you basically undone what you were trying to do and you lose your finance audit committee. Other input?
Will we have one person on the finance audit would they be put on the budget committee then too? What happens? with
Oh,
that
yeah,
person?
that would have to be addressed.
And the other budget committee member is Colleen, or the finance audit committee, correct? Who, she seems to, when I was at the last meeting, she didn't feel like that committee was a burden because it didn't meet that often, but she did feel like it was an important group to have. So maybe, I don't know, maybe reach out and try to recruit some more members, and if don't get any look at combining it, I don't know.
That's a thought. John?
I was just wondering if increasing the numbers to fix. Right now 4.
I mean, maybe it's as simple as just inviting budget committee members to
recommendation.
join the finance and audit committee. And if you have an interest in that, fill out a form and a recruitment form, and we add more members to that group. So that the ones that are there don't feel so overwhelmed of just, it's such a small group.
It's
Goes back to our budget committee becoming members of the finance audit committee. Is the finance audit committee being
Two separate groups they're gonna wear 2.
So I think all of a sudden I'm hearing that maybe we should try to improve the audit finance committee and see if anyone from the budget committee wants to join them and see if that solution will work before we take some formal action to try to, I don't know if I can repeat what you said, but anyway, have them become a subcommittee of the budget committee and deal with the ORS and the bylaws and all those combinations.
So we'll open up the
Uh,
recruitment then, and if bylaws, so recruitment will be for 30 to 45 days to fill the vacancy, one vacancy at this point.
Well, hold on for a second. So that, I'm just summarizing where I thought we were, but I want to check if that's accurate.
I think that's good. I think there's been a good sales pitch tonight for the need for applying.
I think the
Okay.
bylaws would have to be adjusted to add, to to expand that group a little bit, to make it a little bit bigger. So that's something that we
All
have
right,
to be
and so
considering.
Sammy, now can you restate?
I just wanted it to note that, and everybody's got a copy of the bylaws. So under Article 3, it states that the Finance Audit Committee is consisted of 4 voting members
Oh,
who are city residents and 1 non-voting ex officio city council member, our council liaison. Application, and then it goes into the application process. So if we want to add more people to that committee.
Just one clarification, the other person is the finance director. Has always been part of that committee too.
And that's in our committee manual. So all committees are staffed because there's public meeting laws and their government committees. They're all staffed by a staff member assigned by the city administrator. They do not vote. Their duties are laid out in our committee manual.
okay, so John,
I just wanted to go back to Kathy's comment earlier that we're either combining the committees or having a subcommittee under the budget committee doesn't sound like a good idea because you want the separation of duties, right?
Yeah, that's kind of the risk I see of doing it.
yeah,
But that doesn't mean it couldn't be done. It would just, you just
No,
need to
that's
make
okay.
the bylaws really clear and the, kind of the. You have to have, I think you'd want to have it in writing and make it really clear and hand it out to people as they're appointed to that committee. If we did have sort of 2 committees with the same membership.
right.
Like tell majority district where they come.
So basically, then we're not making a recommendation. Or are we making a recommendation that we do some recruitment or change to the Finance Audit Committee, which I don't know if that's our role either.
That would be a city council approval so basically. If your recommendation is that we expand the Finance Audit Committee, that goes back to the Finance and Audit Committee to make an adjustment to their bylaws and send it to city council for approval. That opens it up for more committee members that can apply to be on it, and we would be encouraging budget committee members to be too.
So,
That might be the cleanest way of managing it.
so was that a recommendation?
Yes, I like that. I like where we're headed.
Okay, so John recommended that. Is there a second? Okay, thank you. All right, any further discussion?
I just would like to bring up one point, Linda, and that is that if we're having difficulty acquiring enough members to be on the Finance Audit Committee now, we might want to think twice about trying to expand it.
Even by 1, you're saying?
And does that accomplish what the goals were of this, what was being proposed? Or, about like increased knowledge of this team, this group and more connectivity? I mean, by adding,
Increasing the membership, that's unclear. If the membership was increased solely by the citizen members of the Budget Committee, then yes, I would think that would be accomplishing that goal. But
And it sounds like we would be, I don't know, suggesting or encouraging members of the Budget Committee consider applying to be that person on. That's
Feeling the positivity.
okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we, I don't know if I can say it now, that we, my head is like spinning from all this conversation, which was good. That we send back to the Finance and Audit Committee to look at changing their bylaws, adding a member, encouraged be from the Budget Committee. Is that what was said? John, is that what you
Yes,
said?
that sounds exactly very good.
And then also coming back at that 6-month mark and having a work session with the finance audit and the budget.
Can that be part of the same recommendation?
Sure.
Is that okay with you, John? Is that part of your recommendation? Great. And okay with whoever seconded it? Did somebody second?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. All
I have
right.
a question. Can that be a requirement then for the Budget Committee votes to go to that.
a 6 month or
Winter
whenever. it
one.
is. I don't think we
Just
were gonna open it.
In my mind, the way it's set out, it sounds to me like it's gonna be a city council financial work session. So the mayor will probably work with both the chairs of those, talk about things that are important to the Finance Oversight Committee, important to the Budget Committee, and do a roundtable work session discussion. What is how I visualize it.
So is it a requirement? It is encouraged, it is strongly encouraged as attendance to all of our meetings are strongly encouraged. With the understanding that no one can meet 100% of the requirements. But as many as you.
Good, that's good clarification. All right, any other questions or input? Are you ready to vote? All those in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstaining. You got the vote. Sure.
Just the lack of clarity and so much uncertainty and how written to look at all of them.
I'm sure it will be worked on before it goes back to finance audit, correct? And
Well, it was just a very simple question that they sent me with. So, there would,
Nothing is ever simple.
no, that's right.
maybe not simple, but I think this is what they were looking for, is this discussion. It wasn't, they didn't really answer in their mind. They
And we
just,
didn't either,
they
really.
just had a question of what if, could something different happen? So I think your discussion was good.
And perhaps, and correct me if I misunderstood, but some of the members on that finance audit committee were feeling like maybe they wanted to make a change, they wanted to get off, but there really wasn't any kind of redundancy for them to be able to do that.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for them, but
Right,
I
but
do
that was
think
sort of
that,
my,
yes, I think
gestalt,
that there
if you
is
will.
a feeling that might want to jump off.
Thank you. And next up is the accounting basis for audit purpose.
So this would be a really good reason why you would have these meetings. This, I didn't plan this, but so this has to do with audit and budget combined. Now the city uses a modified accrual basis of accounting for budgeting. And basically we work on a cash basis, so our bills come in, we pay them, they're recorded in the month that they're invoiced. So it could be that somebody did work for us in February, we received the bill in March, but when we date it into the computer, it goes back to February. And then at the end of the year, the city does a whole lot of work of accruing expenses. So some of those expenses are payroll, all of the payroll that between the last pay period and the last day of the fiscal year, we have to accrue all that payroll and put it back into the year, even if it's paid in the new year. Our accounts payable, we have to keep track of all bills clear till August 31st. So we can't really close our books till after August 31st for June 30th. Accounts receivable, if we send out a bill in June and we don't get paid till August on that bill, we have to accrue that back. So there's quite a bit of work to be done at the end of the year. And as the GASB board continues to make more requirements on small cities, especially small cities that we're talking about, the cost of meeting all those requirements continues to go up. It's more work for the cities, it's more work for the auditors. And so our auditor has made the recommendation that the city consider moving to a modified cash basis. And that means that what we take in a fiscal year is taken in, what we pay out in a fiscal year is paid out, and we don't do a bunch of that year-end work. It catches up with itself eventually, you know, that everything's being accounted for. And so it is a lot less work on the city at the end of the year. There is the audit report would have a different paragraph on the opinion letter. Because they wouldn't be able to say that their opinion is that the city is using generally accepted accounting principles. They are accepted accounting principles. They're accepted by the Secretary of State. They're accepted by the Oregon Department of Revenue and other state agencies that recognize that sometimes people use this different a basis of accounting. So this is going to go to the city council, but it is a budgetary because our budget would change. And right now we're budgeting, when you look at our payroll figures, your budget, those aren't just the salaries that our employees are being paid. We're also accruing out than it actually is. So that would change with the next budget, not this budget, but with the next budget. Piece is that a lot of the year-end work that we do involving debt and a lot of those things that would change on how that's done. So it would save the city countless hours. It would save the auditor countless hours, and it would save money for the city. It's still accepted financial reporting. It's possibly a better fit for a small city. So this is really basically information for the budget committee. The decision would be made by the council, and they would have to pass a resolution that says the city's moving to a modified cash basis. And it's a little information sheet that I passed out tonight that just kind of gives a sum up of what that looks like. And I think I had a question here.
Gonna say, would that make budgeting a little bit more difficult, I guess? And currently, if we finish the budget year, but we get billed, and then we pay the bill a few months later, we're able to put it back into the. So would that be going away? So now, if we don't have the cash going out, and when we budgeted it, we get they bill us 2 months later. Now that's not in the budget. Now it's cut into the next budget.
Right. It easier, and yet it would take a little. That's why I said it would take a little bit to catch up because we'd have to do a shift. Right. And so
it's kind of less flexibility as far as budgeting goes.
Only in the first year that you're going to budget. So you would budget differently, So we budget. We actually, a lot of times you budget more than you think you would know when that stuff's going to come in. You have those 2 months out there that you have to still account for, which can sometimes be a lot of work. You're trying to remember expecting a grant. Say we have a grant and we turned in a reimbursement today, and we don't get that money until August. We have to go through the work of putting that back here. And whereas in the new basis, we would just put it in the year that which we received it. And so it will be a little bit of a shift, but in the end, it's less work on all around. It's a less expensive way.
Sounds like shortcuts.
Not shortcuts. It's just a different way of looking at it. And I think the concern is the GASB board continues to put all these requirements on these audits. The audits are becoming so expensive that small cities can't afford to pay for their audit. I mean, our audit right now is upwards of $26,000.
Mm.
When you start adding more requirements for our staff and for the auditors, it just continues to climb. And so small cities are stuck paying these humongous bills when there is a much more simplified way of doing this. For the council, I would definitely be having the auditor come. But part of as we discuss this with the budget committee. And so that's what I'm doing, giving you some information. I don't know if this is what we're going to do, but this will be presented to the city council in probably July. So. Yes, sir.
Yes.
So I just looked up, we have 241 municipalities in Oregon. Do we have any idea how many of them do accrual versus cash basis?
I don't, I'm sorry, I don't have that.
And on there's a report, the last sentence there. Our opinions are not modified with respect to this matter. How do you interpret what he's saying there?
Basically, what they're saying is their opinion letter is it a clean audit or is it not a clean audit? That's always the opinion paragraph. Their opinion paragraph usually will say, we have audited the city. We found nothing that would make us believe that the city is operating outside of generally accepted accounting principles. So instead of saying the way it's said in the audit now, it would draw back to a note in the financial statement. It's pointing to a note in the financial statement where the modified cash would be explained.
And you said the auditor made this recommendation?
Yes,
Did you put that in writing to the city council?
I can provide, yes, I can provide an email from the auditor. Yeah. I'm hoping to have him come. So make his recommendations, so.
Any other
Okay.
questions? Thank you, Ann. And next up is our recruitment to the budget committee.
Okay, so this is your annual recruitment, and part of the things we changed, I actually just found the staff report in 2019. So it clearly lays out the process on how we do our annual recruitment for the budget committee, so that the budget committee can partake in the interviewing of the applicants, make the recommendation to city council, and then council will appoint. Once they're appointed, that person wouldn't actually, they would become a budget committee member on July 1st, but possibly wouldn't have a meeting for 6 months. But the way it was working before, if you guys remember, the committee wasn't getting the opportunity to review the applicants. So we did a recruitment for about a month and a half. The recruitment document was in there. It was extended until May 30th. So yesterday, anybody the chance. Both applicants are currently members that have expressed interest in reapplying for another 2-year term. I noted on the application, both the applications are in your packets there for consideration. Jeff is here for questions. Terry is not, but has served on the committee. Second longest, Jeff is our first longest committee member we were looking at since 2007, I believe. So.
Isn't it a 3-year term?
Did we just have 2 openings?
Yes, that's correct.
Right.
We had these, their positions both were termed out on 6/30.
All right. Any questions of Jeff?
Thanks for reapplying.
Jeff, they might be interested in what you do for employment.
Work for the Department of Revenue. It's been almost 10 years now. bounced around all over the place in there. Program analyst, doing policy work. I was a budget officer for a few years. I'm actually doing development and stuff now, so and I mainly work with like the payroll withholding tax, so I know all about the Eugene payroll dumpster fire. And yeah, this been enjoyable. I helped set up several of the different tax programs. We set up the marijuana tax program. I did a lot of the work for the statewide transit tax stuff that we got put up to, and then we just finished doing the paid family medical leave. So always dropping new tax programs.
Tax me.
Yes.
Yeah. So with that, I will entertain a motion. Recommend that Todd and Terry.
I'm already on it.
I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my script, which, whoops, my bad. Should be thinking better. If Jeff and Terry can be reappointed to the budget committee. So who would like to make a motion?
I move to recommend to city council that Jeff Milam and Terry Dawson be appointed to a 3-year term on the budget committee.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, any questions? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstaining. Okay. Well, you can vote for yourself.
Okay.
We welcome back. So that is it. Okay, so we are close to adjournment, but I would like to thank everyone for their work and especially all the good discussion, which I know it wasn't all clear, but hopefully we'll get there sometime. And also especially thank the staff because they put together the information for us that is so helpful to us doing the budget. And last but not least, I'd like to recognize Ann. This is probably her last budget meeting. If you're counting down last before retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been wonderful and you brought so many good changes to the budget committee and how we do the budgeting and our knowledge, giving us the information that we need to do this so smoothly. We've made a lot of improvements over the last few years. So I thank you for that. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order? It was.
I just think it's really for the Finance and Audit Committee members that they don't feel alienated. I think it's a really good thing to have independent oversight of, even though we've improved a lot, to have the independent oversight, checks and balances. And anybody who applies for these things should ever be afraid to ask questions or question things.
Yes, thank you. Anything else? All right, we are adjourned at 7:28. Again.